Very good morning to you and welcome to the time of the Sunday morning where we actually look at what's making the front pages on the Sunday Times in The Brief. Our friends joining us with various stories this morning. But before we actually get to the main story, we're going to be unpacking all of their leading stories. But we'll start with this big one. It is the elephant in the room. Sunday Times editor Makudu Sefara, who has been linked to the National Lotteries Commission. The SIU says it has recovered over 3 million rand from companies accused of benefiting improperly. Now, Sefara, who's been on the show, is accused of receiving over 500,000 rand for a media-related project. I'm joined now by Deputy Sunday Times editor, or acting editor at the moment, I would imagine, Mike Siluma, and Isaac Mahlangu, who's focusing on the other big front page story, paid millions to stay at home. We'll get to that in a moment with a senior journalist, Isaac. Good morning, gentlemen.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning.
Welcome to The Brief once again on a Sunday. Good to see you.
Yeah,
so, Mike,
thanks for having us.
Like I said, it is the elephant in the room, the story of Makudu Sefara, the editor who has been on the show many times. These accusations or the findings of the SIU. You have issued a statement. It's on page 2 of the newspaper. Arena Holdings has. Just give us a quick idea of basically how you're handling this as a credible news source.
Yeah. I think that, first off, what we like to say is that this is one of those curved balls that come at you when you least expect it.
Yeah.
And it's not the most comfortable place for us to be. I mean, we're more comfortable being the ones who report the news, not being the ones who are in the news being reported on. But our view is that the full story, the jury is still out as to what actually transpired here, and we would like to wait, until all the facts have come out. But what has happened is that Arena Holdings, which is the owner of the Sunday Times and other newspapers, have issued a statement clarifying their position and explaining their posture, in terms of how they are going to proceed in dealing with the matter. And the idea is that the matter must be resolved quite quickly.
So we understand that Makudu is not actively working at the moment.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And just to wrap the story up for us, what has he had to say so far in his defense?
No, I think that he did issue a statement during the course of the week to say that he actually is able to substantiate and explain what happened with and that all of this happened while he was running his own company.
Yeah. Oh, he was, yes.
He was not
working.
editor of the Sunday Times, when all of this happened. And he believes that he has got the evidence, to support his position as to what happened with the money that was allocated to him. But Arena Holdings have issued a statement, as we were saying, and I think readers can, this is on page 2 of the paper today, that quite elaborate, in explaining their position, the company's position.
All right, so if you want to get the full story there and look at that statement, do click on that icon on the corner of your screen. That's where you can subscribe and get the full story, or go out and get yourself a copy of the newspaper. Isaac, you've been working on the big story that's on the front page here, paid millions to stay home. So let's move to that one. Suspended officials cost the country 800 million rand, and they're not even doing any work. Yeah. So, I mean, how many are they out there? How many have you uncovered so far in this article?
Yeah, so basically there's 800 million, as you've just said, that we spend annually on spending people who are staying at home because they are suspended. And I think viewers often see suspensions or on TV, you break those stories, but we are supposed to wrap those DCs within 90 days, and that doesn't happen. So we have a couple of hundreds. I think the provinces are the worst affected, with KZN having the dubious honor. I call it dubious honor because even Professor Somatota Figeni, who's the chairperson of the Public Service Commission, speaks about some suspensions being used to move people out of the way. So we have provinces like KZN and Mpumalanga, which have more suspensions. And and I think for me, what was more telling was that we are not wrapping these issues within 90 days, even though the code for public servants does stipulate that we need to wrap these suspensions in terms of DC processes within 90 days.
And when it comes to these suspensions, I'm not sure how deep your investigation went. I mean, like you say, what Somadoro Fikeni had to say. How many of them are warranted and how many of them look a bit dodgy and seem to be politically motivated to get somebody out of the way?
It's difficult to say because the record keeping is at DPSA, where they just keep records in terms of how many officials or public servants are suspended, but we don't really delve deep into reasons to say why were they suspended. And I think we also went to experts within the labor space, and then what we've established is that suspensions, even in cases where they are warranted, they don't really, no one makes follow-ups. Someone gets suspended, no one makes follow-ups. And I think also what's more worrying is the fact that even in cases where we can establish that the suspension was not warranted, no action gets taken against whoever who may have taken that decision for that suspension to happen. And we also spoke to Wits School of Governance Professor Alex van der Heever, who said PFMA does arm us. We could go after those who use suspensions to move people out of the way. And in most instances, people are moved out of the way for tenders. There's a big tender, people want to make sure that they push it through. And someone just gets suspended and they know that they can put you at home. But I think, and one other thing which should worry us as South Africans is that we, or those who are in charge of the public purse, they don't worry much about what happens with 800 million being spent annually. That could be 8 schools in Gauteng,
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I mean, have you managed to identify, sort of, are there any repeat offenders? Are we looking at certain departments where this is more rife?
No, not even surprisingly, the Department of Correctional Services is the leading department. We know what happened in prisons, contraband and stuff like that. So they're the ones with most suspensions currently, and they claim to be doing something about it. And because I think in other instances you find departments saying, "Hey, clap for us, we are suspending people," but are you ensuring that are you following up on those cases? I think which are the questions that we are asking, and it's something that I think as South Africans we need to pay more attention to. Because this is our money anyway. This is taxpayers' money.
And it's a good point. I just saw one of your labour lawyers raising here as well, is that, remember, that person's at home, they've suspended, they're being paid, and then somebody's being paid to fill in for them. So is that part of the 800, or is that money that's over and above the 800 now? That's going to make the
that would be over and above, because the 800 speaks to people earning while at home. It doesn't speak to people who are doing their jobs.
So double that then, at least.
And I think one other thing that we also need to sort of cast the spotlight on is the fact that municipalities don't have data stored. We can't go anywhere to see what's happening in our 257 municipality, and that's where like most shenanigans happens, and that's where we're not really paying attention to.
All right, well, that's where we leave it for now. If you want to read the rest of Isaac's story there, like we said, click on that icon at the corner of your screen and you can get the full story and the full details. And like we say, that's just, I think, the tip of the iceberg. Isaac, thanks very much, Isaac Mahlangu, for joining us. Mike Siluma staying with us to discuss more of their big stories in the Sunday Times this morning. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. You're watching The Brief here on eNCA on the Sunday morning. I'm Yveka Rangapal. We continue to look at what's making headlines in the Sunday Times. Now, there's been instability at the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, or NSFAS. 2 board members have stepped down and a new CEO has been appointed. And then SASSA and PostBank also have been clashing over service fees. Mike Siluma here to tell us more about both those stories. Mike, let's start with NSFAS. I mean, has there ever been a time that this body or this entity has not had a problem, and now they've got some family problems?
Yeah. You know, the problem, Iveka, with a body like NSFAS is that it's got a very big budget, and it therefore will tend to attract a lot of people who feel that it's their time to eat as well. You know. So some of the fights that you see, you know, whether they are boardroom fights or or elsewhere in the organization, would be linked to what Godongwana refers to as vested interests. In other words, people who would like to make a profit out of. I mean, the organization has got a budget of what, 80 billion.
Yeah,
it is meant to pay for student accommodation, student fees, student loans, and all of that, But in the background of that, there are people, there's an economy that is happening there, because it does not do it dispenses funds. And in the background, it is the people who get the funds.
Yeah, and we know we know there's been so much
whether it's
unhappiness
people who are in the accommodation space and all of that, and there has been a lot of fraud as well.
Yes.
So that is one of its challenges. So some of those fights manifest as boardroom fights and that kind of thing.
And they've had a week of high drama, so what's happened now?
So
what's
in
the
this
issue
week,
of disappointment?
In this week, what happened was that you saw there were two resignations. There was the resignation of the acting chairperson of the board and another board member, which on the surface looked like, this is just a governance thing, which probably is, when your chairperson, or even if it's an acting person, resigns, and then questions arise about whether that board is correct or not, whether it can continue working or not. So Buti Manamela, the Minister of Higher Education, then suggested that he may want to review the constitution of the board to see if it's still constitutionally, viable, kind of thing. But what has happened in the background is that there has been a process of electing or of appointing a CEO, because currently the organization is run by an acting CEO, Wasim Karim, whose real job is the CFO.
Yeah.
So there's been a recruitment process that's been going on, and there was a disagreement, and there was a difference. What we hear is that there was a difference of opinion as to who should be appointed into the position.
And what's the general feeling? Who do they feel should be in the seat?
No, actually, the remaining board members, despite reservations from the minister, decided to go ahead and appoint Wasim Karim, who's been the acting CEO, up to now.
So,
but that decision needs the concurrence of the minister. So that's where the situation is at,
Okay, so now it's and also there's a bit of a salary increase here for the new CEO. Do you think that might also be a bit of a
bump up, which presumably will require the minister's agreement as well, consensus. But the other issue as well is whether we need a body like NSFAS, because it's sitting between Treasury and the students and the educational institutions. It just dispenses funds. That's what it does. And I think last year the issue was raised by the Minister of Finance. Godongwana, who said that do we really need it? Because it's just a middleman. It takes money from one side.
So who's going to do it?
Dispenses.
That's what I wonder.
No, the alternative suggestion is that the money can be paid to the institutions themselves. Your universities.
And then they manage who they dispense
to. They can manage the actual disbursement of the fund. Okay. So that is the other thing, that is bubbling in the background in relation to NSFAS, But the question, as Godongwana says, is whether the vested interests, as he calls them, will allow for that to happen.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see what happens. We'll keep tabs on that story. The other big one on your front page is SASSA and PostBank clash over fees debit. And just when we thought we were sorted out with SASSA and the cards were in order and everyone, despite the few glitches, we're back here with PostBank. What's happening?
No, that story arises out of a dispute, a payment dispute between SASSA and PostBank. It really is a classic case of the left hand not only not knowing what the right hand is doing, but actually fighting with the with the right hand, because these are state institutions both. Their ministers sit in the same cabinet, the Minister of Social Development and the Minister of Communication, under which PostBank currently falls. But that standoff between between SASSA and PostBank relates to service fees that PostBank says it's owed by SASSA. And SASSA says that, and SASSA feels that it does not need to pay those fees.
We're looking at what, like 116 million
in the
rand?
since the last quarter of last year, it's more than 100 million that PostBank says it's being owed. Now that has led, we understand, to a confrontation and serious tension between the two departments, which are involved. And apparently in a cabinet committee meeting, there was a standoff and a shouting match between Sisi Tolashe, who's at
and therein lies my next question.
SASSA, and Mondli, the Deputy Minister at Communications, who was speaking on behalf of.
Well, you know what I'm going to ask you next, of course. I mean, we have this minister who's embroiled in her own scandals and controversies and issues related to money. I mean, where do you put your face now when you're going to have this fight with PostBank and your colleague in a different department?
But as I was saying, Yuveka, that it should not be necessary for two government departments to go. I mean, there are now even threats of going to court. Gosh. It's just like the government taking itself to court.
I mean,
it's so ridiculous, actually, when you think about it, that it's something that should be possible to be resolved within cabinet,
But just so we're clear, because you're inside the story there, I mean, PostBank has a right. It's a legitimate claim, this money, this amount, or is there a dispute over they saying we don't really owe you, or they saying, well, we don't have the money, or it's not that amount, it's not as much as you say?
No, it is not about not having the money. It is that they are saying that the original master agreement expired. Has since expired. But PostBank says that even though it expired, it continued to provide the service. Therefore, it is owed. So it's quite, Because remember, the original master agreement was with the post office, because the PostBank was operating under the post office.
Okay.
And then PostBank was then taken away from the post office. So, but the contract continued, and then it expired.
Oh, okay. So somebody forgot to put the stop date.
So that kind of thing, or maybe it was a gentleman's agreement, that look,
that's
we both state institutions, we both state institutions, it can never happen that one institution refuses to settle its debt with another.
And we're not talking small change here. We're talking over 100 million rand, like we say. So I would like to see how this is going to end. What would be the impact, if anything, on grant recipients? Are we seeing that this is going to affect anything in any way?
As things stand now, it shouldn't have a big impact, because remember, it's not just PostBank that dispenses grants. The commercial banks also do it. And a lot of people have tended to go to the commercial banks anyway. So the likelihood is that the market share, if you like, of PostBank might be affected by that. If PostBank gets to a point where it's not able to provide the service, then
or it says pay up, or else we'll shut down until you pay up.
So it will just be a question of people migrating to the commercial banks.
The other way. Okay, well, let's see what happens. And again, at this point, I think everybody's interested in what Sisi Tolashe will have to say about any issues like this, when it comes to the misuse of funds, or alleged misuse of funds, or just not honouring deals. But thanks very much for that. Mike Siluma, quite an interesting front page today. Read all about it. Like we say, click on the icon on the top, the corner of your screen there, and that's where you subscribe, and you can read all the finer details of these stories. And we've been chatting here to Sunday Times Deputy Editor, Acting Editor at the moment, Mike Siluma. Thanks so much for your time. We'll have a great Sunday now.
Thanks very much, Eve. Thanks for having us.
And Sports Class will be in on the other side of this. BBK is in the house. Welcome back, and you're watching The Brief here on eNCA on the weekend edition of the South African Morning. And time now for a look at sport. Of course, my teacher, BBK, is in the house. And we're going to start off with athletics happening in Botswana with the World Relay Championships. And then, of course, last night, formerly known as Maritzburg United, now Durban City, clinched the Nedbank Cup after missing out on it in 2018. And, of course, there's still the small matter of the Betway Premiership title race as well. But, BBK, sir, good morning.
Good morning, lady. How are you?
I'm well, thanks.
Wouldn't
All the best
it be nice
to you.
if the Sunday Times and eNCA would pay us 800 million for just sitting at home?
And I get that for sitting at home. No, I'm joking. No, it would be nice if anybody got paid, and the people who deserve that money actually
get sick in my stomach.
You'll get sick. We'll have to work.
Come on.
Well, speaking of working and running for your money, let's start with athletics. Team SA, we're on the real front page, as you say, of the Sunday Times. Now, Team SA chase World Relay's glory. I'm not sure if you caught or saw Tabiso's interview with Ezekiel Sepeng yesterday and today. Sounding quite confident, sounding quite
Sounded
cool.
quite confident. I've had conversations with Akani Simbini as well as Lender Kukemur as well. Simbini anchoring the 4x100, making sure that we are in contention, qualifying also as well for the Beijing 2027 World Athletics, as well as Zagitinene anchoring the 4x400. But particularly when it comes to the 4x100, when you look at Kukemur, in the manner that he made sure that at the third lane, penning the rubber, putting it on. Here's a young man, he's 18 years old, he's just matriculated, he's doing his first year in human relations and just got his driver's license. But I tell you one thing, if he drove his car in the manner that he runs, he's going to be in a lot of trouble with the authorities. So that is a great thing to see the 4x100s as well as the 4x400 making sure that we are in the finals today in Botswana. But you have to allow me to indulge you with the favorite paragraph of this story for me, where in the Sunday Times we say, on a scintillating opening day of racing all round, the sleepy Southern African country was transformed from Botswana into Blitztswana. Because it is a blitz, it is scorching, we've got all the World Athletics stars converging in Botswana, and also it matters because it is the first time that such a major event is hosted on African soil. And Sebastian Coe, the president of World Athletics, saying that it signals the beginning of many things to come.
I was just going to say, that's a nice touch and so encouraging, because even me, I would admit, I went, Botswana? That just sounds very dry and very whatever. And then, like you say, Blitztswana now, and it's great that they're coming to the continent.
And you know there are diamonds in Botswana, so the South African team, South Africa, 4x100s and 4x400s have given what? They've got diamonds on the sole of their spikes.
Oh, fantastic. I love that. I like that. I mean, we should turn that into a song, or the one that's already been.
You did say BBK is in the house,
BBK
right?
BBK is in the house. Okay, so we're crossing fingers for the team there. And now, oh, God, you know, when you say PSL, you know, you cause trouble for me in the studio. You cause trouble with the crew as well. So let's talk PSL.
Let's indulge them.
Let's indulge.
So here goes the story. You have an Orlando Pirate that is trying to win their first premiership since 2012. They are going up against the marauding Yellow train from Mamelodi Sundowns, who have won this thing. If you think there's white monopoly capital in the Betway Premiership, there's a Mamelodi Sundowns capital, monopoly, because they've won this thing not once or twice, 8 times in a row. They are gunning for their 9th title. They played against Polokwane City, and they beat Polokwane City to overtake Orlando Pirates to go to the top. They are doing, again, a repeat of the match because it's back-to-back with Polokwane City. It is today, and if they do beat them, they open up a 5-point gap, which says, Orlando Pirates, you have to make sure that you beat Stellenbosch to try and keep this thing alive. But it has been an enthralling race, and we hope that it can continue up until the last time, because what Sundowns have done in the last 5 seasons, they will win this thing with about 5 games to spare.
Okay. Well, let's talk about something nobody's going to fight about. Very quickly, these Maritzburg United, former Maritzburg United guys, very, very quickly.
My favorite story here, you are looking at Maritzburg United now in the guise of Durban City, a team that played lots of their football when they were in Maritzburg at the Harry Kwala Stadium. And then they moved away because there was a certain Durban Mamkiza's team. Royal
okay.
And then they were not so royal after all. And then Kadodia had to take his team, play their games in Durban while traveling, and it made them to be relegated. Fast forward to last night. City gave their chairman Kadodia Cup final cheer, winning their first trophy ever in their existence, having lost this one against the Free State Stars 1-0 many years ago. So for the first time, since 2009.
Yeah.
Durban, KZN have got a team to celebrate in terms of a trophy.
Fantastic. Okay, well, that's where we're going to have to leave it, unfortunately. I know we were supposed to talk EPL, the special game, but that's on page 21. If you want to go and have a look at that one, United need 2 points to return to Champions League, while Liverpool want to firm up own spot. I can see wars already, the paraphernalia in my house, but we'll leave it there. Yeah.
I was going to ask, I was going to bring out my best Christopher.
Well, my children are Liverpool supporters. I say it unashamedly. Do what you want to do with that.
You'll never walk alone.
I will never walk alone. Thanks very much, BBK. Class is dismissed. Can I say it today?
Let's do that. Let's go to church.
Let's go to church. And Kendall and the News Threading team standing by to bring you all the big stories that you need to know to get into your new week. From us here at the weekend edition of the South African Morning, it's goodbye. Hey, we have a date next Saturday, 6 o'clock. Be there. Bye-bye. Have a great week.